Duh.
Hello everyone, I'm your patriotic K-Swope, and today we are reviewing Captain America, the Winter Soldier. Here's how this review is going to work. We're going to talk about the good things about the movie, the bad things about the movie, and then we're going to give it a rating on a scale from 1 to 10. 1 being similar in quality to stepping on a Lego brick, and 10 being Citizen Kane-esque quality. Now, in case you're wondering, I did actually also review the first Captain America movie, and both of these movies are part of K-Swope versus the MCU, in which I'm reviewing all of the MCU films. We are in the thick of Phase 2, and we are at Captain America Winter Soldier. Let's dive right in. So upon my rewatch, the first thing that I noticed, because it's the first person we see in the film, is of course Sam Wilson, okay, played by Anthony Mackie, okay? I love both Anthony Mackie and his character in this. They're great, super great additions to the Avengers roster, and he, of course, as I'm sure you know, goes on to become Captain America later on after the events of Endgame. But I just gotta say, he's always really fun to see on screen, and so I very much appreciate seeing him here. So just a note, getting out of the way, it's fantastic. Also, speaking of things being fantastic, the suit in this, the stealth suit specifically, easily the best Captain America suit in the entire MCU, okay? And I'm not exaggerating. I'm being 100% serious. Like, I love this suit so much. It looks so streamlined. I feel like this is almost what they were should have gone for in the first Avengers film, just to make it a little more grounded and very more realistic, I guess, if that makes any sense. It's like something a modern soldier would wear. I really, really love that suit. I just think it's a beautiful work of art. We do get to see it again in Avengers Endgame, but unfortunately we only see it for about the first, quarter of this film, which is very unfortunate. But regardless, I loved it while we had it. Now, something I mention when I'm talking about films usually is the messaging. What exactly is the film saying? And I caught on pretty quick because Peggy Carter, she says something to Steve early on in the film when he's visiting her, and she's like really, really old. Here's the exact quote. "Sometimes all we can do is our best, and the best we can do is start over," which is basically just painting out what's going to happen at the end of the film. And so I really, really liked seeing that again. I think it's a very good placement of the message because I didn't notice this line until this watch through. And I've seen this movie at least like 3 or 4 times, I think. And so after seeing that and then seeing how it plays out, I was very, very pleased with seeing all of that. But speaking of Steve visiting Peggy, it's really sad. Like, I don't remember it being this sad, but I think she has some form of dementia because, like, halfway through the conversation, she just kind of stops and goes, "Steve, you're here." Almost like she just met him again for the first time. And it's really heartbreaking. And, like, I don't think I've had any grandparents or anyone close to me who had dementia like that, but I know I have some people I've talked to that do, and it sounds like, I don't know, really painful. It's like you've known this person forever, and all of a sudden, all the character development you had with them up to a certain point is just gone out the window, and it's just really, really sad to see. So, again, dementia and, things like that, not fun at all. So, I guess this scene really helps me empathize with people who are affected by that, and not just people who are affected by it, but I mean the people who know people who are affected by it. It is very heartbreaking and very, very sad to see. Now, something else I bring up too when it comes to MCU films and superhero films in general is that I think the best superhero films are ones that basically make a superhero movie out of a pre-existing genre. And this film does a really, really good job about taking a action thriller, okay, like a Jason Bourne type of movie, and doing it superhero. And I really do appreciate the effort that was put into that because I think it works really, really well. And so well, in fact, I think like the Jason Bourne, I haven't seen a Jason Bourne film, just to be quite honest. So if I'm speaking out of terms here, feel free to correct me. But from what I can tell of them, from a little bit of information that I know, it really fits into that kind of niche of like, okay, there's a grand conspiracy going on, and there's one guy who's kind of working against the odds to try to take out the conspiracy. There's some espionage, there's some action, there's some things like that. And so that's exactly what happens in this film, and it is very, very cool to see how they adapted that. Now, something that I remember my brother pointed out that I never actually noticed, but the song "It's Been a Long, Long Time," which in case you don't know, you can probably remember this song most fondly from Avengers Endgame, because that's a song that's playing at the very end when we see Peggy and Steve back in the 19 whatevers, and they've been reunited, and then, credits begin to roll. We see that, we hear that song playing during that time, but this song actually first shows up in this film because when Nick Fury goes to Steve Rogers' apartment, I guess he turns the music on just to kind of cause a, distraction, if you will, or something like that. It's kind of complicated, but either way, it's there. That song is playing, and so that's a little bit of subtle foreshadowing. I don't know if the Russo brothers at the time thought of that as foreshadowing, because I don't think they knew that they would be directing Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, but regardless, it still happens, and they made very good use of it retroactively. But in that vein, this film has a lot of things that really set the groundwork for things that we're going to see later on, but it does not feel like sequel bait, okay? I want to make sure that's very, very clear. The end credit scene, maybe a little bit. We'll talk about that a little bit down the line, but it does not feel sequel baity at all, because I mentioned the long time thing. We get to see more of the whole Peggy Carter arc playing out, and I just feel like this film lays the groundwork for all of that stuff really, really good. And also, none of it feels forced. Even when we revisit it in future films, it doesn't feel like that was put in place as a question that needed an answer in a sequel. And so I think that's what makes it all the better, to be quite honest, because it was there in isolation. If you're just watching this movie with no context of any other Avengers or Captain America, MCU, anything, it still makes sense and it's still good. It's also important to note, too, that this is debatably, I say debatably very loosely because I'm pretty confident that it just straight up is, the most important film since Avengers for the overall plot of the MCU. What I mean by that is this, because what happens is, if you're supposed to track the major events that take place in the MCU, okay, up to like Endgame or so, you're going to notice that Iron Man is really big. In fact, the entire Phase 1 is really big. Avengers is massive. Then after Avengers, we have Iron Man 3, which doesn't play a massive role. I mean, we'll see where Tony Stark comes from that later. Thor: The Dark World is a bit of a blunder. Then you hit this film, and this film is basically a direct continuation of what S.H.I.E.L.D. does, mean such a big part after the events of Avengers. And Captain America, of course, sticks with S.H.I.E.L.D., and things just kind of get crazy from there, as I'm sure you know. But either way, I think it's very, very important because, I mean, we got Guardians of the Galaxy coming up next, which I'm very much looking forward to rewatching. However, you could hypothetically skip the Guardians of the Galaxy movies and just meet them for the first time in Avengers Infinity War. And I can say the same thing for a lot of other characters that we're going to see in the MCU. I think this is probably the most important film, other than maybe Age of Ultron, in Phase 2. So that's very, very important. And so I just want to bring that up there. We're going to talk more about that as we talk about the next Captain America film and the next Avengers films also. So make sure you guys are ready for that because I got a lot to say here. I also got to point out too, this is yet another film that Howard Stark appears in. Now, he only appears in photo form, like there's no actor actually really playing him, but the same guy who played him back in the first Captain America film. We kind of see photographs of him and he's talked about there. So Howard Stark's presence is still all over the MCU. I mentioned that in a few reviews ago, so make sure you guys go check those out, by the way, if you haven't already. But there you have it. There's something else that's interesting too. More into the plot details. What happens is we find out there's a grand conspiracy inside of S.H.I.E.L.D., where basically a bunch of S.H.I.E.L.D. people have been sleeper agents for Hydra this whole time, and the Winter Soldier has been operating for these S.H.I.E.L.D./Hydra agents also behind the higher-ups' backs in order to do certain things, take out some assassinations and things like that, just being a very powerful opponent. And I think it's really cool because we get a cameo from the Senator from Iron Man 2, who wanted to keep Tony Stark from being able to do the Iron Man thing, right? You remember him. We find out that he is actually Hydra. And with that context, you're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. He had more reason than we originally assumed for wanting Tony Stark to be out of the picture. But shortly after that scene where that gets revealed, we basically find out that, you know, what's happening is Hydra wants to hijack all of these S.H.I.E.L.D. things. They have these databases of potential threats, and they basically want to hijack that and have these new helicarriers they're building just go to town and wipe out a bunch of people who are potential threats to them, which we'll get into more of that a little bit, so just hold your horses. But regardless, one of the people they name drop in there is Stephen Strange, and this is a good, like, 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, before we actually see him for real. So it's cool that he gets a name drop there. Speaking of little details I liked, we get a pretty nice cameo role from Danny Pudi, who, if you do not know, is from the greatest show of all time, Community. He plays Abed, who is a lovable, probably autistic film geek, and we love him. And Danny Pudi, he also, by the way, voiced Huey, so that's a whole lot of fun. And he's also the guy from this clip.
Coffee and socks are not a luxury.
All right, give me a luxury. What luxury should I have?
Private plane.
Larry, I'm on DuckTales.
So I kind of want to circle things back in. We talked about the general messaging of the film as to what's going to happen and how Peggy kind of foreshadowed that. But there's some more like, I don't know, subcontextual messaging happening also. And I think it's really, really fascinating. Captain America's kind of whole political philosophy in this film is big government and government overreach are bad, okay? And so that being said, the way we're kind of seeing that exemplified is what happens is S.H.I.E.L.D. puts this database together, don't these helicarriers, to basically go in and be precautionary, take out threats before they're able to harm people and stuff. However, the problem is this: Captain America, standing for the basic principles of America and freedom, realizes that if you do that, you are taking freedoms away from people who have not yet deserved to have their freedoms taken away from them, which is a really, really good point. But we can see Hydra then take this concept and hijack it, okay? As we see many times whenever someone in the government tries to fix something. Because the government has these ideas to fix stuff, okay? And then some political person comes in power for selfish reasons, and they always hijack the systems, make them worse, or make them serve them. And so I think that that's not what they're particularly showing in this film, but ultimately they're showing a more directly villainized version of that, if that makes any sense. And with all that being said, I really, really like the messaging. I think it makes sense. In Captain America, he's just a really moral guy, which is, very fun to see, very good to see, because I feel like we're lacking so much in the moral department with the way society is nowadays. Speaking of Captain America's character too, I was watching the film and I was thinking to myself that, there are so many people who just agree to follow Captain America because they just kind of know what kind of man he is. And as they kind of really established in the first Captain America film, he was chosen to be the super soldier because he's a good man, not because he's a good soldier or anything like that. And so that was very, very important. And I thought of something, because biblically, right? Christians, we are taught to live above reproach, especially if we are going to be in some type of leadership or teaching within the church and things like that. And so it really reminded me of this. Captain America really exemplifies this, but in 1 Timothy 3, verses 1 through 3, here is what's said. Here is a trustworthy saying. Whoever aspires to be an overseer desires a noble task. Now the overseer is to be above reproach, faithful to his wife, temperate, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not given to drunkenness, not violent, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. And I think those are things that Captain America really represents in this film, and that's why so many people are so willing to follow him, follow his lead, even though he's part of this grand conspiracy, and most people are usually against him, but he's able to pull a lot of people back to his side by the end of the film. I think that it's that living above reproach that Captain America exemplifies in this film that really, really do wonders for him. And I think that is a really practical application too. We can look at Captain America and think, okay, if I live my life like this, in a similar way to Scripture showing, I would gain the respect from people, okay? So I think that's really cool. I think that's a really great concept. Hopefully you guys thought that was interesting as well. But I just got to point that out. I thought it was nice. Oh yeah, we also get the first glimpse at Avengers Tower in this film, very briefly, but we do get to see it. And that, of course, is also foreshadowing for what we're going to see in Avengers Age of Ultron, because that is going to be the Avengers' main base in that film. So, more about that later. As I'm sure you know if you've watched my Avengers review, I absolutely love Avengers Tower / Stark Tower. I think it's a really, really fun place for things to happen, and so love it to death. Rounding out the good section, we have a mid-credit scene. No end-credit scene, but a mid-credit scene. And in this mid-credit scene, we are introduced to Stryker, right? The Hydra guy, the bad guy with the monocle, okay? And we're kind of shown things. We're seeing that he has Loki's staff, which we're going to see all of this again, Avengers Age of Ultron. And we get first introduced to the Maximoff twins, right? Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. And that is really, really cool. And like I said, Age of Ultron, that's really just teeing up for that. Does it affect the plot? No, not really. But it is the most sequel-baity part of this entire film. I will at least say that. But either way, very cool to see, and it lets us know a little bit of what we're going to get into in Age of Ultron. So very much looking forward to that as well. Now, we have a bad section to talk about. Cannot forget the bad section. First things first. I have always been bugged by the physics of Captain America's shield, okay? And what I mean by that is the fact that it always just comes back to him. I'm not buying it. It really bugs me. Now, in Age of Ultron, we actually see there are like small repulsors put in Captain America's shield that basically guide the shield back to him naturally. So that's really, really cool. I just wish that they would have laid that groundwork, if that's what's happening in this film at least, there, because there's so many instances where he throws the shield, it bounces, comes right back to him almost supernaturally, and I'm just like, bro, come on. This is one of like the more realistic, grounded superhero films, and so I'm having a hard time buying that. The other thing is this is more of a nitpick than anything, but the movie, it keeps my attention very, very well. But by the time I'm done with it, I'm like, that felt kind of long, actually. So not that it's boring or anything like that, but once you're done with it, you're like, yeah, that felt a good 2 hours, 20 minutes or so, because it is just right under 2 hours and 20 minutes. So, again, not the biggest thing in the world. And that's going to round out the bad section. Before I get into the score, though, I got to say something. So, let me give some context here. This film came out when I was 13, and when I saw it, I kind of wore as a badge of honor the fact that I was just not super into it, wasn't a huge fan of it, thought it was just kind of okay. And for many, many years, I just kept on saying that, believing that, just thinking like, is alright, but like not thinking it was anything like super great or anything like that. And I don't know, I'm kind of almost ashamed to say that after my rewatch and looking at it a lot more critically, and after, understanding film a whole lot better, that upon my rewatch that I did like earlier today, I actually do think this is a really good movie, and it feels almost painful for me to say that because I've held this position of it's just okay for like the longest amount of time. So it's very awkward. I'm admitting I was wrong, and no one likes to do that, but I got to do it. Got to be the bigger man at some point. And so, yeah, I was wrong. I think it is a good film. It is a pretty good film, actually. It's very well made, and there's really, other than my few nitpicks, there's not really much bad about it. I will say, comparing it to some other Marvel films, maybe it doesn't have quite as much sizzle, but to be fair, it's got the right amount of sizzle for the kind of movie it is, and so I can't knock it for that. So at the end of the day, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, it gets an 8 out of 10 on my rating. And ladies and gentlemen, that is going to wrap it up for me today. Thank you guys all for tuning in. I, of course, am K-Swope. Don't forget, Jesus loves you, and I will see you in the next one.